Music Universe. I'm Matt Bailey here with the one and only Dallas Wayne. Dallas, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Matt. How about you?
I am great. I can't wait to talk to you about this new album, this new music, this new single. The new album is called Coldwater, Tennessee, and the new single is I Hit the Road. And you are also on every single day on Sirius XM on Willie's Saloon. So I want to back up before we get to the music. If you had to pinpoint, did you start out as broadcaster or as a musician?
Well, I started out as a musician. I didn't get into working for Sirius XM and Willie's Roadhouse until 17 years ago. I started working on Outlaw Country, and then shortly thereafter is when I went over to the classic country station with Willie. And I sort of backed into it, but I've always loved radio, and honestly, it's a great way to make a living. I like the idea of sitting in a chair with a cup of coffee for about 6 hours a day, just talking into the microphone, spouting BS and playing great music. It seems like a natural fit for me.
Absolutely, absolutely, it is. And people who listen to you, I'm sure, recognize your voice. Tell us about this new album. Did you start writing it during COVID? How long has it taken you to get this new music out?
A lot of these songs are songs that were in my existing songwriting catalog over the years that I wanted to either revisit or revamp completely and kind of start over with the same idea or the same melody and rework them. There's only one brand new song on here that I wrote with Buddy Cannon, who is the producer of this record, and Bill Anderson, who does a beautiful recitation on He Even Brought Her Flowers. That's the only brand new song. But COVID-19 gave me the time off the road as a musician because my schedule, it's about 50 hours of radio a week, and I can do it while I travel, but it was hard doing that and shows at the same time. It's always a time crunch when you, just the logistics of getting from point A to point B. You know, it's like, I'm sitting here on a layover at the airport for the next 2 hours. I could be doing something productive rather than reading a magazine, you know. But COVID-19 took away the touring side of things, so it gave me a chance to kind of get together with Buddy and put together this record.
Love it.
That was one of the silver linings of the whole thing.
Tell me about this single, I Hit the Road. You talk about being on the road. Tell me about the single.
That's a song that Robbie Folks and I wrote together a few years back, and both of us were young and dumb when we started out on our musical journeys, so to speak, and had a lot of similarities in our lives. My dad sent me to Nashville with a rollaway bed, 2 amps, 2 guitars, and $200, and a trash bag full of clothes. I didn't even own a suitcase back then. And that's how I moved. And it was talking about going out on the road. In fact, the rollaway bed that I brought to Nashville, because he said, you're going to need something to sleep on when you get down there. And we had this rollaway bed in our guest room that God was only used probably at Christmas time when family would come to visit. So I strapped that rollaway bed onto the top of my car. There was no place to put it, so I put it on the top of the car and was going down the road with the mattress flopping up in the air and that kind of thing, because the car itself was full of instruments and amps and clothes and stuff. So that was kind of hitting the road in a hard way, where I hit the road and the road hit back, because you've got a whole bunch of different perceptions on what life as a touring musician is going to be like when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, that certainly do change as you get older.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So talk about those changes. What have you seen in the way touring musicians work, the way touring musicians play from, the 20th century till now? What has been the biggest change that you've seen?
It's a lot easier to travel these days. Used to, you'd pull into a truck stop and one poor guy in the band that was in charge of the business end of the thing went over while everybody else was getting a meal in the restaurant. He was over there at the payphone stuffing money in, checking his messages, making all the calls he needed to do. His food always came back to him in a styrofoam container that he could eat on the bus when he got back on. And nowadays, you know, you can, like I've done my radio show in the back of a bus going down the road. If you don't mind the engine noise, and which kind of adds some atmosphere, actually, it works because of the internet and all the technical things we have access to now.
Now, when you do that, just broadcaster to broadcaster, when you do that on the bus, are you live or are you tracking?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
I've done it either way. It depends on schedules, but I try to do the show live whenever possible. Did it for years live. Nowadays, it's technically voice tracking, but I can actually do a break, and within 2.5 minutes, it's on the air, which is a pretty long way over to New York and up to the satellite and back down. But 2.5 minutes with the technology we have. So it's basically a live show, even though it may be recorded, you know, and I can record an hour or two ahead. If I've got an interview like this to do, I can free up a little time and do that and clear my schedule for a couple of hours and get stuff done. It's great.
Now, what made you want to do this record? I mean, you're so busy. Music is such your life. What made you say, you know what, more music? Let's release something. Let's do another record. What was the impetus to do this one?
Well, I'd done 13 albums of original music in my career. And then the last 2 records were a cover project, kind of a tribute to classic country called Songs the Jukebox Taught Me. And I did 2 volumes of that. And one of the things after those records were released, and I loved doing them, but I wanted to kind of get back to the songwriting side of me. And that's how this came about. It was through Buddy Cannon's encouragement to get it done and do it.
What do you have been performing and on radio for so long now? What do you make? It feels like a trap question to ask this, like we're trying to get you, but it's a genuine interest. What do you make of how country music has changed over these last many decades?
Country music has always changed. When Bill Monroe and Ernest Tubb hit the scene, they were revolutionary, and there were traditionalists in country music that just sort of poo-pooed what they did. They thought it was an abomination, or the positive side would be, oh my goodness, I've never heard anything like this. This is cool. And the other people were saying, it's changing this music. I don't like change, you know. And that's normal. That's always happened. And I think that's been the success of country music as an art form. It's grown and changed over the years with the listening public. And that being said, I do think there is a vast underserved and undiscovered market for classic country music. I think it's on the upswing among people who might be a little tired of songs about drinking beer in the back of a pickup truck. And that music is all fine, and it's all well and good. It's just not. It doesn't inspire me. And I honestly, in all honesty, I highly doubt that 30 years from now, because we live in a more disposable society too. That's another other side of the coin. I don't think 30 years from now there's somebody that's going to probably be singing the hits of today 30 years from now, but they might be singing Green Green Grass at Home, or On the Road Again, or City of New Orleans, or Tips of My Fingers by Bill Anderson. Those songs will remain. They have the staying power because they were so well crafted and everything, and they were when careers were built to last. You know, a record label might have taken 10 years to break an artist and get them going. Nowadays, it's 1 or 2 albums and you're done if you don't do exactly what they deem as a successful project. You know, they drop you.
Yeah.
But back then, they weren't afraid to develop an artist for 7, 8 years at a time, and it was always, your time's coming. Just wait. You know, your time's coming. And it was a sense of security with the artists too, because they could develop as artists.
Oh, exactly. If you had to put your style with this music in a category in country, where would you put it?
I think of a classic country or traditional country as not so much a decade's time period thing. I think of it as a different part of country music as far as songs that use traditional instrumentation. The lyric crafting will probably be slightly different, even though a good song today that's written today down here on Music Row is going to be a good song regardless. It will always happen. But I think that the music is more of a style rather than a decade.
Sure.
Or 2 decades or 3 decades. We were talking yesterday about the 90s country being the new oldies. And I find that hard as an old guy because, you know, that song just came out. And it's like, no, it came out in 1997, you know. And it kind of takes you back.
Yeah, it's funny. These artists today want to go back to a time when there was real country. What they're talking about is the Brooks and Dunn, Garth Brooks, Randy Travis era, and then the artists then wanted to go back to, you know, the traditionalists then wanted to go back even further than that. So
Yeah.
that definition of what is real country is always moving. So I guess to end this out, I'll say not by any genre, not defined by any genre, not defined by or by any style, by any time period. What is country music to you?
I think it's the heart and soul and poetry of America. And what we have as a culture. Was talking about this earlier. Near as I could find, the last book of best-selling poetry in America was about 1958, and I think it was Edgar Guest was his name. He was a kind of an O. Henry type of a poet. More of a storyteller, a lot of folk poetry, if you will. And I think the renaissance of songwriters from back in the late 50s and early 60s, you know, when Willie came to town, when Harlan Howard came to town, Hank Cochran, Bill Anderson, Roger Miller, Chris Christopherson. There's a mighty long list of these guys that were, to my book, literary giants. And I think that poetry is what in the music is what makes this stuff last forever.
Wonderful. Well, Dallas Wayne, thank you so much. The new single is I Hit the Road, and the new album is called, let me double check the title, Coldwater, Tennessee. I had the first word, I always got to make sure and second guess myself, but the new single is I Hit the Road. The album is Coldwater, Tennessee. Thank you so much, Dallas, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.